Now let's talk about complex pullbacks. In the last video we talked about simple pullbacks, and just to show you one more beauty, this one, very simple pullback, only white candles, small white candles back into the trend, and then we got this signal here. We got a beautiful stock with a double top, and we had this gap open on a Monday, and then we continued to the downside. So this is a very nice simple pullback. Now what does a complex pullback look like? Well, a complex pullback is a pullback with waves inside of the pullback. So let's see if we can find one. This one, for example. Here we have a wave structure inside that pullback, and these become harder to trade because we don't really know if this attempt to go back into the trend didn't work out. Why is this attempt going to work out, getting back into the trend? And to assess this, we use two simple solutions. One is the trend line. Once this trend line breaks, here we connect the swings. Once the trend line breaks, we can get into a trade if the other factors comply, or we can wait for a break of the last swing low, or we can look at our M15 stocks. So for example, say we want to get in here, and then we go to the M15. What is the M15 stock doing? Yeah, at the point of this candle, we already cut down to the other side from overbought. So this is perfect for us. So when this is pointing down and on the M5 our trend line breaks, then we are good to go. Another example is this one. We had a small pullback, then a bigger pullback. So what we do is once more connect these, and of course in the case of this one we also want trend first to break down below this pivot. So in this case I would wait for the trend line break and the pivot break, and then we had the retest here, and we had these small candles, and then we had this candle which broke below all of this structure here, and that would be an okay entry for me with a small stop for a bigger gain. Let's see if we can find another complex pullback. These go into 1, 2, 3 waves. Once we are at 4 waves, I don't really want to get into this trade anymore. So here we had a 1 wave, 2 waves. This would be an okay candle to enter, for example. But if we get more than 3 waves in a pullback, then I'm getting very cautious about getting into the market. For example, this one is a tricky one to trade in my eyes. You need to have a more advanced knowledge of price structure in order not to get whipsawed by this. What would happen here is that we got in here, very likely. Yeah, we had the break, pull back once, but the stochastics is a no-go. We pull back twice, we made this double bottom here, and then we got this signal. This is where I would get in, get stopped out for 16 pips something. Then we broke below this low, and then we came back up. So what are you going to do now? Are you going to get in here, knowing that this already didn't work out, but we are still, the overall trend is still intact, and by the way we retested these double tops here. So this could be a viable entry. But what I want to see is, again, we draw a trend line, connecting the highs in this case, and then we break above, we come back to this trend line, and then we retest this low we made previously. So now we have a head and shoulder structure, and as soon as we break the neckline, then I don't really care about the stochastic in this case. And if we go to the M15, let's say this would be our entry candle. If we go to the M15, then you can see it is nicely pointing up, and this is exactly what we want. So this would be a nice entry. So we got stopped out here once, but every trade idea for me is good twice. So if I get burned twice on an idea, I leave it be. But if it works out on a second time, usually we have a good trade on our hands. And this one was good for 42 pips with a stop loss of 22 roughly. And then we get this one here we pull back again into these highs, and we get a push into the pivot. So this would have been an okay entry. However, I don't like this one because the trend line is so steep. So what we do again is we wait for this push and we get another pullback, but now we make a higher low. So we are again going with the trend. And by the way, we also have a trend line here, and we can paint another trend line here. So steeper trend lines means trend acceleration. Once you have 3 or 5 of these trend lines which go steeper and steeper, eventually one will break, and that is the beginning of the trend reversal. Here, complex pullback, 1 wave, 2 waves. This would be a really nice entry. Draw a trend line here again. We got in here for 36, for 49. The complex pullbacks require a bit more knowledge of price structure. They require that you have more patience, and also they require that you don't get emotional about them, because these can all fake out traders a lot. You go short here, you get faked out. You go short here, then you close it out thinking, it's not going to work out anyway, and then price finally follows through. And then here we have a 3 waves pullback, 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves. Sometimes we get a divergence on these 3 waves, which is nice, but if we don't, as always, we draw our trend lines. This is actually a wedge. Once we break above it, we can go long. But the easiest way to trade these in the beginning is to stay away from them and wait for simple flat pullbacks, and that will make your life a lot easier in the beginning. And simply observe these complex pullbacks until you get a feeling for them. For example, this is a classic flag, 2 waves to the top. Then we retested this, our short signal around here with 18 for 23. Probably would have get stopped out at break even. So complex pullbacks, as I said, take your time to learn them. Observe first. If the first trade into the direction of the trend doesn't really work out, wait for the next simple pullback to come around, or draw your trend lines and observe. For example, if we wanted to enter here, go to the M15, pointing up at that time, so we wouldn't have taken this trade. And if we take a look at this entry candle here, we are almost in oversold territory with the M5 stocks, but we are in a okay downtrend because we broke below all these lows and below this trend line, for example. So if we take a look then at the M15, now you can see it's pointing down nicely. Yeah, so we are going with the overall price cycle, and that will make it easier for us to trade complex pullbacks as well. Going up to the M15, seeing what price action and stocks are doing there, and if they comply, then usually our entry on the M5 will be much easier to handle as well. Post your complex pullback trades on the forum. I will help you out as much as I can. Draw your trend lines, draw your price structures. Don't despair, because these can really be a lot of trouble in the beginning. So as I said, I advise you trade simple pullbacks first. If they don't work out at the first time that you want to get back into the trend, then wait for the next simple pullback to come around. And one more thing to talk about, which is important when talking about complex pullbacks, is identifying local highs and lows versus global highs and lows, because these local highs and lows, of course, they don't insinuate a trend change, only because this is a complex pullback. And what you have to do is that you go to your M15, and this is where you mark your global highs and lows. This high, for example, was confirmed when this low broke, and this high was confirmed when this low broke, and so on. But these have nothing to do with the local pullbacks. These are overall trend structure. And then we go down to the M5 and we see this double top here, and then we see this double bottom get taken out. That doesn't really mean a lot. Why? Because the overall trend is still dictated by the global highs and lows on the M15. So in this case here, I wouldn't even say that we are in any kind of trend, because we are stuck between this low and this high and nothing is moving at the moment. So once we broke above all these highs here and we retested them with a complex pullback once more, and then we broke out, this would be a time for me to say, hey, something has shifted here and it could be a good time to look for longs. Reading these local highs and lows is very important, because most people, they only look at swings but they don't really analyze swing size. So this swing size here, of course, means a lot more than this tiny swing size here. So the easiest way, as I said, go to the M15, mark your global highs and lows, and then don't get confused by complex pullbacks and local highs and lows. These are not incredibly important to us. These are important for us to get back into the trend, the overall trend, but they don't mean anything regarding to where overall market is headed.